I am Florence Nightingale of England, and I am proud to say that I'm a nurse. My parents went on a long trip after they were married, and I was born actually on the continent of Europe, and I was named after that lovely city, Florence, Italy. When we returned home, we had 2 country homes, and so I grew up in style and I loved my childhood. Did you know that girls were not educated in my day? Boys, yes, but girls, no. I was taught by a governess until I was 12, and then my father taught my sister and me history, mathematics, and classical languages. It was a far better education than most girls of my day. Today, nurses are respected professionals, but in my day, well, Charles Dickens, maybe you've heard of him, said this: "A nurse is a frowsy, drunken slattern who stole the pillow from underneath the patient to put on her chair." Well, nurses' social status was less than that of a kitchen maid. So, how did I sink to the depths of society coming from English aristocracy? Well, let me tell you how. My grandfather loved to help the less fortunate. He was sympathetic, generous, and most philanthropic. Our home was lovely, and we hosted wonderful dinner parties. But outside the gates of our house, there was misery and starvation. Starvation stalked the streets of London. It was in a deep depression. And I planned on studying nursing, which sent my mother into hysterics. My sister became furious, and my father was incredibly upset. They thought nursing was beneath our dignity. Well, I had been practicing nursing my whole life on my dolls and animals and some of the poor near our house. When I was 16, I heard a call from God. But what did God want me to do? I was not sure, but I was willing and eager to follow God's calling. In my day, hospitals were staffed by nuns and the lowest dregs of society. Hospitals in London had filth, a terrible stench, and a total lack of fresh air. Plus, they had a disregard for any of the patient's needs. Rich people never visited a hospital. They kept their sick at home. Only the poor and the destitute used hospitals. I was Florence Nightingale, a refined, well-educated, well-traveled person. Work as a nurse? Well, the idea was unspeakable to my family and to all of our acquaintances. I did have the privilege, though, of meeting Dr. Elizabeth Blackwell. She was America's first woman doctor. She was so wonderful, and she was sympathetic, more than any woman I'd ever met, and she supported my dream of becoming a nurse. Was I married? People always ask me that. They're curious about that. Well, Richard Milnes was a member of the Parliament, and he did propose to me. When I thought about it, I thought, if I do that, I will only be hosting lovely dinner parties. And so I told him no. That did not make my parents happy at all. You see, I had grown to be quite independent. At 33, I became the superintendent for the Institution for the Care of Sick and Gentle Women in Distress Circumstances. Let me tell you what that meant. That meant wealthy English women, only Protestants, and preferably not poor. But I battled over them until I got them to admit Catholic, Jewish, and poor people. This is my first victory over prejudice. The Crimean War was raging with England, and papers described forlorn soldiers dying in filth and squalor. Papers were pleading for daughters of England, would you come in this extreme hour of need? I was the superintendent of female nursing of the English General Hospital in Turkey. Even my parents approved of that. On our way to Turkey, I stopped and bought some of the items I thought we would need with my own money. When we walked up to the hospital from the dock, we were ankle deep in mud and filth. At last, my 38 nurses were getting to come to this enormous gateway to the hospital. We stood there thrilled, but later I thought it should have said, "Abandon hope to all who enter here." It was a deplorable place. It had muddy walls, broken floors, heinous smell of flesh rotting, and men lay almost naked in their beds, in their blood-stiffened uniforms. Broken bones were not fixed, open, disgusting wounds were not dressed, and rats were scurrying everywhere. Plus, these bugs kept dropping from the ceiling. It was horrible. The doctors allowed my nurses to do nothing at all because we were rich women and, they said, useless. They did give us 6 rooms in which to live. One was a closet, and one had a dead Russian soldier in it, along with his stench. I remember that first night very well. I lay on my cot, and I listened to the rats scurrying. The patients were half starved. That's because the food was so terrible. So my nurses volunteered to help with the cooking, and they amazingly said yes. So we started as cooks and not nurses. People in England sent money when they heard what we were doing, and so with that money we bought blankets and soap and 200 scrub brushes to clean the filthy floors. If the men wanted something done, meaning the doctors, if they wanted something done, they would come to me, and they knew that I would get it done. They would sometimes say, "Oh, but Florence, it cannot be done." And I would say, "Oh, but it must be done." Now, patients had soap and toothbrushes, good healthy meals they ate with clean forks and not their filthy hands. The patient's clothing also had never been washed. It was putrid. I settled the problem by renting a home and turned it into a laundry. The patients' wives had no jobs, and they lived in the disgusting cellar of the hospital. But now they had work in the laundry, and the men's clothes and their bedding were clean. And the 200 scrub brushes that I had bought were put to good use cleaning the floors, which I personally paid the women for. My office was a tiny storeroom. It had no stove for heat, and rats scampered in and out. Behind the screen was my cot, where I slept. From here, I directed the 38 nurses. We had come to do medical care, but instead we made bandages, scrubbed rat-infested floors, and did washing. The doctors soon learned that there was no work that was beneath us. One important duty that I welcomed was to be at the sides of those who died. I held men's hands during surgery. You see, there were no sedatives then. People asked me how I could stomach so many amputations and over 2,000 deaths. And my answer was, God had called me to this work, and God, who can do anything, will see me through. Now, this is kind of embarrassing, but there were some men that called me an angel. They called me the lady with the lamp, because at night I would go throughout the corridors of the hospital, there were actually miles of them, with my lamp to see my people. Some people, I'm told, even kissed my shadow as I walked by. Well, I decided to go see other hospitals in the Crimea. Soldiers were always glad to see me, but the medical staff did not cheer quite as wildly for me as the soldiers did. Finally, I became very ill with the Crimean fever, and I lingered close to death for a few months. Finally, I was well enough to go back, and I was pleased to see when I got back to the hospital that it was running very well. Peace was signed, and war ended in 1856. My nurses returned home. They wanted me to go home on a fancy ship with a great celebration, but I said no. And I secretly went home on a French ship. And one evening I walked into my parents' front room and into their arms. I had become quite famous while I was away. Poets wrote of me, and the postman brought me many letters. Some of them had gifts, and others were offers of proposal for marriage. I did not want the publicity, and I refused all the invitations, except when the Queen of England asked me to come, I did go. The Crimean War had broken my health, so I intended to reform the entire British military health system. That was my goal. In fact, I became the mother of statistics, and I spent the next almost 50 years in my bed. And from that bed, I worked on my books and articles night and day. I published over 1,000 pages by 1858. An aunt came to live with me and be my assistant. Generous folks from England gave me over 44,000 pounds, which was quite a sum of money in our day. And with this money, I founded the Nightingale School and Home for Nurses in 1860. I kept publishing books and articles. My best known work is called Notes on Nursing. I'm told they even use it some today. It was published in 1859. I believed that a nurse must be willing to do anything. If a woman thought anything beneath her, she was useless as a nurse, I thought. Queen Victoria had a valuable brooch made for me, designed and made, and gave me 250,000 pounds, with which I started St. James Hospital. As time went by, my family all died. And so I passed my years on my own, writing from my bed. In 1907, England gave me the Order of Merit, which had never been given to a woman before. The ceremony was held in my bedroom. And I said from my bed, "Thank you." And almost immediately after that, I slipped into a coma and died soon after. A few months after my death, in 1910, there was a large celebration at Carnegie Hall in New York City in the United States to celebrate 50 years of the Nightingale Training Center for Nurses. Now, there were over 1,000 nurses training schools in the US. Several of the teachers were from St. Thomas, the school that I had begun. Perhaps God did use my life after all. That was all that I sought. Thank you.